when we allow the fear of failure to stop us from pursuing our destiny, your destiny, we put a stop to God's initial plan. You're going to succeed. You're going to see my hand move. But the situation that you placed yourself in, God didn't place you there. Until you realize that you're not supposed to be there, you're going to be stuck where you are. You should know without a doubt that if God had power to get you through the first time, then his power doesn't diminish, but it only increases with the battle. If your battle is stronger this time around, then guess what? God's power is stronger this time around as well.
Hello, I'm Marissa Gonzalez, and I'm so glad that you're watching this program, Destined for Greatness, today. I know that God has something so special that he wants to share with you. He's been wanting to talk to you. He's been wanting to come into your home, make a place in your heart, and today you have given him an opportunity to do so. So as we begin this program, just sit back, take a moment, grab a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, and just sit back and allow God to speak to your heart. Open your ears, open your understanding, and open your heart to receive everything he has for you. We're going to be reading out of the book of Ephesians, chapter 4, verse 1. We're going to be talking about the life that we should live and how it should match our calling. How God has called each and every one of us for such a great and amazing purpose, and the life that we live needs to go in line with that calling. So to help me today as we begin this topic, I have none other than my lovely sister, Melina.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for accepting the invitation.
Of course, it's always a pleasure to be here.
And she doesn't invite herself anymore.
Yes,
I invite
I do.
her now. Okay, sometimes. But in the book of Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1, it says, "Therefore I, a prisoner for serving the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of your calling, for you have been called by God." You know, as we were getting ready to prepare for this topic, something that really stuck out to me, it says, "For you have been called by God." The first thing we need to acknowledge is that we are called.
Right.
The first thing we need to realize is I have been called. There is something that God is going to do in my life. And a lot of times we think that, you know, well, she's doing this and he's a teacher and he's a preacher and she's a singer and she's this and that. And then we don't know where we fall into place. But the first thing we need to do is acknowledge that God has a purpose and a plan for my life too. He has something that only I can do. Something that he has specifically appointed me to do for his kingdom.
Amen.
Whether it is to teach or preach or sing or play an instrument or be an usher or door greeter, whatever it is that God has called us to do, we have a calling on our life. And that's the first thing you need to understand today. You have a calling on your life. And maybe you've been questioning it. Maybe you haven't felt like, maybe I'm not called as much as they are or as much as that person is. You are called. And whether or not you decide to accept it will determine where you are in the future, whether or not you reach your destiny and your purpose.
I want you to understand something, that yes, God calls, he calls everybody. Mm-hmm. And you know, the word is telling us that, you know, lead a life worthy of your calling, for you have been called by God. And I want you to understand, take a moment and understand, how many times have you been at home and nobody calls you? You know, nobody calls you. Your phone has full battery. You know, you don't even have, you know, nobody calls the house phone. Nobody calls your office phone. Nobody pages you or, you know, beeps you or whatever anymore. Nobody calls you sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. But God does. Yeah, God called you. It was a priority to him to put something, to give you a purpose.
That's right.
To give you a reason to serve, to give you a reason to bring life to his people. God called you. Nobody else did. Maybe nobody else cared, or nobody else, you know, thought you mattered.
Or
but
took the
God,
time.
exactly. But God called you.
That's right.
For a specific purpose. You know, and people might say, "Oh, well, Melina, you know, you're on Destined for Greatness with your sister. God called you to do that. God called you to sing. God called you to be with the children." But nobody knows that God also called me to clean the church.
Yeah.
You know, God called me to help my dad mow the lawn of the church sometimes. Mm-hmm. You know, God called me to do those things too. Yeah. So I think that we are sometimes we overemphasize on the fact that your calling might not be as great as somebody else's. But that's just the beginning.
Yeah.
What God is calling you to do right now is just the beginning. It's only the beginning. He called you, number one, so that's something to be excited about, because somebody called you.
Yeah.
You know? And the fact that he has a purpose for you, and that he knew exactly what he was doing. He entitled you. He thought that you were worthy of it. We might not feel worthy, and we're not, but he considered you worthy of that calling.
That's so true. And, as you're saying, maybe nobody else calls you, maybe nobody else. God takes the opportunity to call you. And there's times that we don't answer. And then he takes the opportunity, all right, I'm going to try again. And then this time he gets a voicemail. And then this time we're too busy. This time we're hanging out with friends, so we don't answer. And God has definitely called you. God has a purpose and a plan for your life, and he has called you. And as we go on with this topic, it says, therefore, I, a prisoner for serving the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of your calling, for you have been called by God. And another thing that really inspires me is that it says you have been called by God. Sometimes we put our calling in the hands of others. I put whether or not I'm going to amount to something is in the hands of whether or not you give me an opportunity.
Wow.
My success is going to be in the hands of the pastor, or in the hands of the worship leader, or my success is in the hands of whether or not this boss thinks I'm good enough. No, we need to understand our destiny, our purpose, our future is in the hands of God if we put it there.
Right.
We have to say, Lord, be God of my life. Lord, take over my situation. Lord, be the God, be Savior of my heart. And when we do those things, when we turn over our life to him, when we give it all up to him, that's when he becomes the one that is calling us, and that's when we allow him to do what he said he would do in our lives.
Right.
We give too much credit to other people. I'll be a worship leader if they let me. I'll be this if they let me. I'll be this if he thinks I'm good enough, then man, I'm going to go to the top. No, God obviously saw something great in you. Right. So it inspires me when it says, because you have been called by God. Paul could have even said, you have been called. I'm telling you. So that's good enough. I'm saying you're called, so that's good enough. No, he's saying by God.
By God.
He knows who the credit goes to.
Right.
And when you're called by God, God makes no mistakes. And when you're called by God, God is going to make a path. He's going to open a door, and he's going to give you everything that you need to accomplish what he's called you to do.
Amen. Hallelujah. I feel that sometimes whenever you've been called to a certain position, it might seem as though you're in that place, or you're in that position because somebody gave it to you.
Yeah.
Or somebody left and that spot was vacant, so you were the next in line to receive that calling. Yeah. But you have to understand that the steps of the righteous are ordered by God.
Yes, they are.
And so he knows exactly where he's placing you. He knows exactly where he's putting you for that specific time, and the calling he's given you. It has to be a life worth living. It has to be a life. You have to live a life worthy of what he's given you. Mm-hmm. It's not something to play around with. I'm trying to choose my words correctly and righteously by saying that it's not something that you play around with. You can't take advantage of the calling that God has placed in your life. When the word says, lead a life worthy of it, lead a life worthy. Don't play around with what God gave you. Don't mess around with the fact that you do have authority over his people.
Yeah.
Or that you do have authority. You do have the microphone for 30 minutes to sing. So don't take advantage of that 30 minutes. Lead a life worthy of it. Lead it like you know you're not worthy of it, but you keep trying. You keep trying because you know you're not worthy, but God is saying, try to live a life worthy of it. Lead a life worthy of it, because this is important. I cannot expect to be leading praise and worship like we've done for so many years. Lead praise and worship and then get off and we'll still be on the stage and awesome, and the presence of God is just strong, and people are being transformed, people are being changed, and then getting off the stage and just being this horrible person.
Wow.
Being a hypocrite, or being a gossiper, or being a cheater and being a liar. I can't do that. I can't do that. The calling on your life has to be so real and so passionate that you have to lead your life worthy of it. If you weren't doing things right, well, I'll tell you what, when God gives you that position, you better do things right.
That's right.
Maybe you were, kind of, playing the field and playing around and cheating a little bit and lying a little bit and drinking a little bit. Nobody's going to find out. But I promise you that whenever the time comes that you live up to that calling in your life, you better set things straight with God. Don't mess around with God. Don't mess around with what he's given you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
So
Nobody
true.
else called you, and then the one person that did, you're going to mess around with what they've given you. You know what I'm saying?
And that happens so many times.
Right.
That's where so many people get it twisted. That's where so many people make that mistake. They think, well, God's going to give me another opportunity anyway, so I'll go ahead and do what I want to do, live my life how I want to live it, but then on Sunday morning I'll give it all I got. So Monday through Saturday, I'm going to do what I want to do. And that's the thing. I learned, the Olympics, when they were going on, for 4 years, they get ready. 4 years they're training for that one moment, for that one opportunity, for that one time that they can get out there and show what all they got. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's the same, we need to see it in the same sense. You know, that Sunday morning when we get up there and we have an opportunity to make an impact in somebody's life. We have the opportunity to be a vessel that God can work through. Now, Monday through Saturday, I need to be living a life that is getting me prepared for that Sunday morning. The way that I spend time with the Lord, the way that I treat other people. Because we've seen so many people that we're at the store or whatever, and someone is like, hi, you know, I'm talking to them, or a cashier, and then she asks me something, and we get on the topic of church, and I say, yeah, I go to, you know, the House of Refuge, and we start talking, and they're like, oh, I've been looking for a church. Where is that? Now, can you imagine if I would have walked in there and I would have been in a bad mood, I would have had a beer in my hand, I would have been, and then I said something about church. You know, it gives them a totally different view.
Right.
You know, I have to live Monday through Saturday. Like, I got to give it all I got. I got to live a life. I got to be preparing. I got to be exercising. I got to be warming up. I got to be getting ready, spending time in prayer, spending time in the Word, spending time with God, you know, loving the people, so that on Sunday morning when I get up there, it's evident all the time that I put in all week.
Right.
I can't give what I haven't been getting. You know what I mean? I can't get out there and give these people, show them how to enter into the presence of God if I haven't even been there myself.
One thing that I've been noticing a lot of is that whenever you have whenever they have like the beauty pageants, like Miss Universe, Miss America, a lot of these women have been trying for so many years to win this title. You know, it's a very high title, you know, and they try for so many years, and then something happens after they win or they receive the crown. Something happens, and their crown is taken from them.
Yeah.
You know, because they didn't live a life worthy. If it may have been something that they just said in an interview, or something that they did from the past, that, you know, their crown is taken from them. And I think that as Christians, we need to really look at that, really examine how the world does things. You know, if you're not worthy of it, I'm sorry. We're taking your crown. I'm sorry, you're not worthy of it. We're taking your Super Bowl title. You're not worthy of it.
Wow.
But the Christians, sometimes we fail to live like that.
Yep.
We fail to live in a fact that, you know what, if I'm not worthy of it, this calling and this very important position that God has placed me in will be taken from me.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And we cannot be living it like anything. Like, just, okay, well, let me just live how I want, but as long as I'm teaching, it's okay. We gotta remember that we're representing the Lord, representing His kingdom.
Exactly. We're going to keep talking about this topic, Melina. We're going to go to a song. So stay right there where you're at. Call someone, tell them Destined for Greatness is on, and that they need to watch this topic. They need to watch this program and hear what God is saying. But enjoy this song. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.